How's it going, guys? Cody back again, dropping out another video. Right, guys, as you can see from the title of this video, it's a story out of the Guardian newspaper. It was published on Monday, and it's about thousands of ex-prisoners are likely to be sleeping rough. It's not likely, it's fucking happening. So this is a story. It's quoted by the Prison and Probation Minister Rory Stewart as well, included in the story. Shocking statistics, guys, and stuff like that, as usual. But obviously, if you're on the right side of the tracks, you're not going to care about prisoners leaving prison and being homeless. But they should do, because if you leave prison homeless with no foundation to work up from, you fall straight back onto the streets, right? A lot of people then find addiction. A lot of people find addiction in prison. People go to prison as addicts and then find other drugs like spice. And then they get kicked out with £46. They've got no foundation to work up from. There's no support network. There's no family. There's no friends. They leave prison with £46. They go and get some drugs. They get off the face and they fall back into the gutter. And it's sad to see. I've been homeless twice, guys, right? And it's not a good place. You know what I mean? Some good people, homeless people that are victim of circumstance, they found addiction or alcoholism through bad lives, bad choices, grown up in care leavers, sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. And it just shows us failed society. I think we're the 5th richest country in the world. And the amount of, do you know what? I was in town the other day, right? Obviously town being Manchester. I was in town, right? And I only walked from one bit of town to the other bit, right? A couple of 100 yards. And I must have seen 10, 12 homeless people, right? And it's just a mark of a failed society. And like I say, when they go back to the streets with no foundation and no support network, what happens? They resort back to crime. They revert back to type. And prison doesn't work, right? And like I say, the only people that prosper in prison are those that have got nothing on the outside of prison. Anyway, guys, pardon my little rant, but it's something I feel very, very strongly about. Do you know what I mean? And that's why reoffending rates are so high. Some people reoffend and get breached, not because they want to go back, not because they enjoy committing crime, but it's so that they get recalled, so they go back to prison, so they get a roof over their head, 3 meals a day. They're the only people that prosper in prison. Prison is a punishment to anyone that's got something to lose on the outside. You know what I mean? That's my opinion, guys. I stick to it. You have to let me know your opinions. You know what I mean? So anyway, guys, the headline reads, thousands of ex-prisoners are likely to be sleeping rough. The prisons minister says homeless former offenders could fall prey to a life of vulnerability. More than 100,000 prisoners left detention centres for unsettled or unknown accommodation over the last 3 years. Just more than 100,000 prisoners, guys, left detention for unsettled or unknown accommodation over the last 3 years. Ministry of Justice figures have revealed, raising concerns over the numbers of ex-offenders who could be sleeping rough. The figures come as the government announced plans to tackle the epidemic of homeless ex-prisoners. Almost half of the 220,411 prisoners released over the last 3 years left prison for accommodation that was either not tracked by authorities or was classed as unsettled. Unsettled, I'm guessing it could be sofa surfing, do you know what I mean? Or obviously unknown, you know what I mean? Around 1 in 6 former prisoners were classified as unsettled, likely to mean sleeping rough or another form of homelessness between April 2015 and March 2018. The figures obtained by the Liberal Democrats through a Freedom of Information request revealed that HMP Norwich released 72% of its prisoners to unsettled or unknown accommodation over the past 2 years, the highest proportion of any prison. Guys, 72% of prisoners that left Norwich jail have gone to unsettled or unknown accommodation. You know what I mean? And they wonder why reoffending rates are so high. It's unbelievable, guys. A total of 45 prisons released the majority of their prisoners to such accommodation in that period. Now, for me, right, it might say, oh, like, do you know what I mean? They don't keep up to date. When I left jail, was I asked if I had anywhere to go? No. Was I facing eviction when I left prison through rent arrears occurred whilst being in prison? Yes. Like I say, it was just because I had a support network on the outside. If I didn't, honestly, I'd be homeless. And I'll be dead before I'm being homeless again, I'll tell you straight. I'm not going through that again. I mean, it's embarrassing, and it It took me a lot, do you know what I mean, to get the security that I've now got, do you know what I mean? And it could have been taken away by a prison sentence. Now, first time I went to prison, I was on remand, I wasn't guilty, the charges were dropped. 2 other times I was guilty, and I deserved to go to prison possibly. I mean, not that prison works or anything, or I didn't gain anything from prison, but it is what it is. So it says, Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrats' Home Affairs spokesman, whose party analysed the MOG figures, MOJ obviously stands for Ministry of Justice figures, said he was concerned that prisoners had fallen through the cracks and would not be able to access vital rehabilitation services. Now, let me stop you there. Rehabilitation services. For me, rehabilitation is a made-up word, guys. It's as simple as that. There are great organisations reference employment for prisoners and training and courses and stuff. Organisations, the Ministry of Justice, are failing prisoners' families, and are even failing prison officers in every which way. So it says here, so to prevent reoffending, prevent reoffending, prisons should be places of rehabilitation and recovery, and that work must continue when offenders leave the prison gates, Davey said. Thousands of people have nowhere to go upon release, are likely to be able to get a job, are less likely to be able to get a job or access education or healthcare. It's hardly surprising that some turn to stealing or even choose to go back to prison for the sake of a warm, dry bed, as I alluded to before. The criminal justice system is fundamentally failing people. People are reoffending just to get a meal or a place to sleep. On Monday, the government announced it would invest £3 million over the next 2 years in a pilot scheme for dedicated officers in prisons to equip prisoners for a life on the outside, with a focus on getting those serving short sentences into suitable housing. Well, 1 minute they're talking, obviously the Tories are talking about, or the Prison and Probation Minister and the Justice Secretary are talking about abolishing short sentences, which is the right mentality to have, because short sentences, you don't get any education, skills or training. Not that you get them in other prisons, there's no consistency. Some prisons do, some people don't, but like I say, it should be a blanket thing, everyone gets the same. Like I say, Prisons Minister Rory Stewart, he looks like a baddie out of a fucking Superman film. Prisons Minister Rory Stewart said ensuring prisoners had a stable home was vital to avoid reoffending. Too many rough sleepers come straight from prison, moving from their jail cells into this outdoor life of isolation, vulnerability and addiction, he wrote in his vlog for the Ministry of Justice. On the streets without a job and without any mental health support or a bed for the night, they are sucked back into a criminal life, reoffend and soon end up back in prison. We must do more to help rough sleepers and ex-prisoners in particular to find a house and re-establish a more stable life. Stewart said it was vital for public safety that ex-prisoners were reintegrated into society, is protecting all the potential victims of their crime and reducing the burden of reoffending that cost the taxpayer £15 billion a year. Thus preventing rough sleeping among ex-prisoners is good for them, good for the streets and good for the public, who will be better protected from the misery of crime. Now, do you know what? Right, the talk there, the quotes and everything from the Prisons Minister Rory Stewart are top draw. But it's just that, it's words, guys. Now, the thing is, right, obviously, when it comes to, like, the Ministry of Justice, right, if people start resigning in that bitch's Theresa May's cabinet, they have to plug the voids and then they pull people from different things. So what I'm saying, that there's been numerous prison and probation ministers and justice secretaries over the past few years. And like I say, so people come in with an idea, it doesn't get implemented, it never comes to fruition. And then someone else comes in with another idea. And no amount of academic qualifications gives people the right to reside over people they can't relate to. Most of these MPs, guys, have been raised in bubbles, in millionaire families with a silver spoon in the mouth. They're residing over prisoners that they cannot relate to, right? And their mentality, for the most part, is prison is punishment. The punishment of prison is losing your liberty. Don't like keep doing this, not throwing darts. But the punishment of prison is losing your liberty. Once we get over that, prisons should be places of education, skills and training, reintegration, resettlement, right? And then for me, every prisoner that works in prison should get at least minimum wage, right? And then you can either play a victim surcharge if there is a victim, even charge them a bit of tax, right? And then they're putting tax back into the system rather than being a drain on the system. Obviously, not every prisoner can work in prison because there's not that many, like there's a certain amount of jobs. But every prisoner should receive minimum wage in prison. Like I said, victim surcharges, charge for the electric, for TV, little bits, you know what I mean, not excessive. But so the point is, that when you can only spend so much on the canteen a week, depending on what your IEP status is. The more, if you're enhanced, you can spend more than if you're on standard. You can spend more on standard if you're on entry. You can spend more on entry than if you are on basic. So that's that. So every prisoner should get minimum wage, right? Because prisoners, money management can be a problem with certain prisoners, then what should happen, the rest of that money should go into a savings account. And then a prison, they should be like, you've got like charities like Shelter that are inside prisons, right? But I used them when I was in prison, and I asked them to fill in a form. They never filled it in. I nearly lost my accommodation, right? So, but the thing is, they should then have the option to say to one of these foundations, look, can you put that money down? So obviously, the longer in prison, the more money you'll incur, like you'll have savings. That should be then put down as a bond and a deposit on a property. So when you leave prison, you've got skills you can use in the outside world. Educational courses are available to you. Probation should be ensuring that happens and being a bridge and bridging that gap and with employers, right? You've then got a foundation to work up from. You stand a better chance than if you leave prison with £46. They don't ask you where you live and they kick you back into society, because you fall back into a lot of people that are homeless, and I'm not like tarring them all with the same brush, because I've been homeless and I never turned to alcoholism or addiction, but a lot of people do. You know what I mean? They come from the streets, they go to prison, they go from prison back to the streets, then they want to get, especially in like right now, I know you can hear the wind and the rain, guys, right? It's Manchester, we're famous for it, but like people will get recalled, so they go back to prison. No one else, if you've got a wife and kids and somewhere to go, you don't want to go back to jail. The only people that want to get recalled and stuff and breached are so that they've got something, they've got a roof over their head and a bed and a warm cell and food. You know what I mean? Because it's better than the alternative. It's as simple as that, guys. If we release prisoners and they fall through the cracks back into that world, they've got to feed themselves or they've got to feed the habits, and most of them feed the habits, and they have to commit crime to do that, which fuels the cycle of criminality. And because prison doesn't work, and it just goes, and it's just a revolving door, and it's like a swings around, the roundabout's going round and round and round. You have to stop to interject to help that person. And anybody on the outside, on the right side of the tracks, that wants to brutalise prisoners and doesn't give a shit if they're homeless or not, well, they will do when they become victims of crime themselves. With fewer police on the streets, guys, since 1996, since comparable records began, reoffending costing £15 billion a year, right? Prison has to be the last line of defence. It has to be places. Rather than making prisons out of our students, we should be making students out of our prisons. It's as simple as that. I stick to it. And like I say, I don't have all the answers. I'm just on a rant now. I'm talking way too much. So I'm going to leave it here. I'll put a link in the description, as I always do. As always, guys, let me know what you think about the video. Like, comment, subscribe. Cody out.